The scene begins in the house of Yuma Mitaka, a second-year high school student, who is watching a news report about a large sinkhole that has emerged near Harumi Pier. The report states that this sinkhole is not a small-scale dungeon. It is the 6th dungeon in Japan, following 5 others. Yuma then starts watching a video on his phone. In the video, a man welcomes viewers to the dungeon channel and reveals that he has visited Sapporo's White Dungeon, where he is currently on the 18th floor. There, he encountered numerous fairy-like monsters and used thunder magic to combat them. After defeating one of the monsters, he discovers a dropped item, a pure white moonstone worth approximately 1.4 million yen. Yuma closes the video and reflects on the fact that it has been 7 years since dungeons first appeared. Initially, the underground labyrinths were frightening, but now they have been accepted by everyone. He remembers that various creatures have emerged from these dungeons, and from these creatures, magical gems have been born, which are essential for casting magic. Despite the seemingly unrealistic developments, only a few people were benefiting from the dungeons, which seemed unfair to Yuma, who felt that, as an ordinary boy, he would never get such opportunities. He was jolted from his thoughts by the sound of his dog barking, prompting him to check on the commotion. He saw that the dog was barking at some bushes and wondered if someone had entered there. Following the dog, Yuma remained skeptical, feeling that nothing exciting ever happened to him, and he was neither particularly talented nor smart. To his surprise, he discovered a hole in his yard. With a torch in hand, he investigated, expecting to find a sinkhole, but instead, he stumbled upon what looked like a strange cave. As he turned on the light, he saw a slime. Normally, slimes appeared in colors such as red, aqua, blue, and green, but the one he encountered was completely different. Yuma wondered if it was indeed a slime. He checked international news and found a report about an American metal slime of a metallic color, which was known to be very fast and tough. However, the video was blurry, so confirmation was elusive. Yuma concluded that it was certainly a slime, but noted that there had been no further news about the subjugation of such a slime. Yuma's frustration grew as he contemplated the possibility of defeating the slime and becoming the first person in the world to do so. However, his excitement was short-lived, as he remembered that only the most curious individuals ventured into dungeons. He watched a video where a man discussed the dangers of being a dungeon explorer, but also highlighted the immense value of magic gems, which could make dreams come true. Determined, Yuma returned to the cave armed with a hammer. He noted that the cave was quite narrow, which he hoped would limit the slime's mobility and reduce the danger. As he struck the slime with the hammer, it began jumping erratically around the cave. Yuma shouted at it to stop, but the slime retaliated by hitting his hand. Yuma applied an ice pack to his injured hand, lamenting the ordeal. He instructed his dog to stay away, as the cave was now clearly a dangerous place. He wondered how he could defeat the slime and researched strategies to combat it. Yuma realized that the belief that slimes moved slowly and were easy to defeat was misleading. The slime was actually swifter than anticipated, and physical attacks alone were insufficient to bring it down. Yuma considered using magic but quickly realized he was unable to cast any spells. Just as he was about to give up, he had an idea: what if he could defeat the slime by burning it? He decided to use a burner, typically used for home barbecues. He cautiously descended into the hole, making sure not to get too close to the slime. As he activated the burner, the slime began moving again and attacked his leg. Yuma retreated to his house, feeling defeated. He considered sealing off the hole and pretending he hadn't seen anything, or even reporting it. However, he recalled the news advising that if a dungeon appeared on private property, one should contact the police or local government, a prospect he found troubling. Yuma lamented his situation, reflecting on how things had gone wrong in his life and why he was still so invested despite the suffering. He thought about stopping his efforts, but felt compelled to keep trying. He searched for a cooling spray and remembered that such sprays, like insecticides, could immobilize insects. He wondered if it might have a similar effect on the slime. Even if the cooling spray didn't defeat the slime, Yuma planned to use fire as a last resort. He recalled hearing that metal becomes brittle when heated and then quickly cooled, and decided this would be his final attempt to overcome the challenge. Yuma entered the cave, noting that the slime had not left and was situated deep inside. He carefully approached and used the cooling spray, causing frost to form on the slime's surface. With the slime now frozen, he prepared to use the burner to apply fire, being cautious of the flammable gas. However, the gas was accumulating in the back of the hole and not reaching the slime. Observing the slime, Yuma felt confident that the cooling spray had made it brittle. He grabbed the hammer he had brought earlier and struck the slime. After the attack, he found that nothing dropped from it, but he felt a sense of accomplishment as he exited the cave. The fierce struggle between him and the slime had come to an end. As Yuma lay down to rest, his dog started barking again. His mother told him to check on the dog. When Yuma went outside, he saw a cardboard box, and upon removing it, recognized an old friend's belongings. However, he was also surprised to find a metal slime among the items. The scene then shifts to Tel Aviv, Israel, at the International Dungeon Research Organization. An expert named Ethan stood alone, while her assistant, Clark, approached her. Ethan, despite having seen it many times before, remained fascinated by a massive stone tablet discovered in the depths of the world's deepest dungeon, Orpheus. The tablet was inscribed with hieroglyphs that read, "When the king of the monsters awakens, the world will begin to crumble." Feeling exhausted, Yuma was walking alone, lost in thought about the slimes and the unusual events he had encountered. Suddenly, Kaide Ichinos appeared behind him, startling him. Yuma was taken aback, having not expected her presence. Kaide, displeased with his reaction, expressed her disappointment that he seemed so surprised by a greeting from a cute girl. Kaide then reminded Yuma that they would be entering their final year of high school when spring arrived, and questioned whether he was feeling self-conscious about it. Yuma assured her that he wasn't. She then asked if he knew what Rui had been up to lately. Yuma replied that he didn't, as they weren't even in the same class. Kaide mentioned that although they used to hang out together when they were younger, Rui now aspired to work in the dungeon business in the future. Yuma commented that he hadn't realized Rui was following trends, but acknowledged that the dungeon business did seem to be growing. Kaide explained that the dungeon industry was rapidly expanding due to various types of dungeons. She elaborated that magic gems from the White Dungeon, in particular, had medical applications, such as treating injuries and illnesses, which had attracted significant interest from the healthcare sector. Yuma was intrigued, realizing he hadn't been aware of this development. Kaide complimented Rui, saying he was amazing and had a promising future. She then asked Yuma if he had considered his own future. Yuma responded that he had been thinking about it in his own way. Yuma then watched a video featuring two cartoon characters discussing dungeon trivia. The video explained that monsters inside dungeons respawn rapidly, making it possible to grind for magic stones. However, the drop rate for these stones was only 1%. Yuma began to understand the system and calculated that if he killed one slime daily, he would obtain a magic stone in approximately 100 days. He realized that slimes were rare, and that a magic gem from such a rare monster could be worth $1 million. The idea of earning millions every 10 days excited him, and he shouted with enthusiasm about his bright future and the potential wealth he could amass. Motivated by his newfound excitement, Yuma committed to defeating slimes regularly. However, despite his efforts, he didn't find any magic stones. Frustrated by the difficulty and with his pocket money running low, he decided to take a break. The cost of buying cooling sprays and gas burners was depleting his funds, adding to his challenges. As Yuma lay down, his dog came over and began to lick him. Yuma commented that it wasn't ideal, given that nothing was coming from his efforts, and he was getting frustrated. Nevertheless, he appreciated the dog's attempt to cheer him up and thanked it. He resolved not to lose hope, and reminded himself of Kaide's words about considering his future. Yuma reflected on whether he was on the right path, and how he spent his money daily trying to defeat slimes. On February 2nd, Awasawa Rui greeted Yuma at school. Rui was carrying a lot of chocolates, prompting Yuma to mention that it was Valentine's Day. Yuma admitted that he had forgotten about it since he didn't typically participate in such traditions. Noticing Rui's abundance of chocolates, Yuma asked with whom Rui planned to share them. Rui responded that he intended to enjoy them with his family and offered some to Yuma. Yuma declined, saying he didn't like sweets. Rui seemed surprised and inquired if that was really the case. Yuma realized he had lied, as he actually liked sweets, but he was too disinterested to ask Rui for any. Rui then asked if Yuma had received chocolates from Kaide, noting that he hadn't received any in recent years, while Yuma seemed to get some every year. Rui expressed curiosity, but then mentioned that class was about to start and said goodbye. Yuma began searching for Kaide throughout the school. When he finally found her, she playfully tapped him on the back. Yuma winced and asked her to stop hitting him there. Katie explained that she had been intending to give him chocolates but was disappointed that he had gone home earlier. Yuma admitted that he had been loitering around the school gates, hoping to run into her. Kaide handed him the chocolates and asked if he had received any from anyone else. Yuma replied that he had received one or two. When Katie asked him to show them, Yuma was momentarily stunned. After thanking her, Yuma inquired why she hadn't given any chocolates to Rui and suggested that she should give some to him as well. Kaide responded that Rui had plenty of chocolates, so it wouldn't be fair if Yuma didn't get any. Since Yuma was her childhood friend, she wanted to keep things balanced. Later, Yuma, still frustrated, went back to his slime hunting. His anger drove him to use a stone to crush the slime. Despite his efforts, nothing seemed to go right. As he was leaving after killing the slime, he noticed some flares. Upon checking, he discovered a magic stone, which he had finally obtained on his 181st day of hunting. Yuma was thrilled to finally have obtained the magic stone. He was excited about the prospect of earning millions and imagined buying fancy dog food for his pet. However, he paused, wondering if the stone was truly a gem. He envisioned it being more sparkling and thought it might improve with polishing, but he also considered the possibility that it could just be iron. Yuma decided to check online for more information. He learned about the Black Dungeon, which, unlike the White Dungeon known for its healing magic gems, had not seen much advancement in exploration and investigation. The Black Dungeon lacked popularity, and instead of magic gems, monsters in this dungeon dropped a metallic ore known as magic ore. Data indicated that magic ore was supposed to boost physical abilities, but the effects were unclear and hard to measure. The labor required to obtain and assess the magic ore didn't seem to match the results, making it more efficient to simply engage in physical workouts. As a result, the trade price of magic ore remained low. Reading about the Black Dungeon left Yuma feeling deeply disappointed. He placed the stone in a drawer and lay down on his bed, lamenting that his effort might have been in vain. Despite all his struggles and the money he spent, it seemed like he had ended up with something worthless. He reflected on a conversation he had with Kaide after summer break ended 5 months ago and realized that in 2 more months, he would be entering his final year of high school. He wondered if life was really this challenging and felt he had wasted many months of his time. With Rui already having chosen his path and working hard towards it, Yuma felt a sense of urgency to think about his own future. He decided to proceed at his own pace and do his best, setting aside his frustrations about the slime and the stone. The next morning, as Yuma woke up, he heard his dog, Mamie, barking again. He went outside to check, telling the dog to stop barking. Yuma was still yawning and reminded himself that he had already filled the hole the previous day. However, when he opened his eyes, he was surprised to find the hole had reappeared. To his astonishment, the slime was there again, even though he had filled the hole before. As Mame continued to bark persistently, Yuma pleaded with the dog to stop. Even after bringing Mame inside, the barking didn't cease. Yuma's mother came by, scolding him for disturbing the neighbors. After settling Mamie outside, Yuma returned to his room, reflecting on his situation. He realized that if he had known the work would turn out like this, he should have reported the issue immediately. However, it was too late now, and he didn't want to face the scolding. He examined the black stone again, contemplating what he should do with it. If it were a genuine magic gem instead of a mere magic ore, he wouldn't be feeling so disheartened. Considering that it might not sell well, he thought he should at least try to use it. Yuma watched a video where a female instructor explained how to harness magic from swallowed magic gems or ores. The process involved using mana electromagnetic waves, which increase by defeating monsters. A person's mana level could be measured with a special device. Having killed many metal slimes, Yuma assumed he must have a decent mana index and wondered if he could purchase a meter to check it, similar to an electrical appliance. Yuma went outside and retrieved an object that resembled a hairdryer. He mentioned that spending 100 yen was quite a hit to his wallet, but since he had bought it as a cheap second-hand item, it was acceptable. He aimed the device at the stone and activated it, hoping to see some reaction. However, nothing happened. He returned to the shop where he bought the item and informed the seller that it was broken. The shopkeeper apologized and, after inspecting his stock, assured Yuma that there was no malfunction with the device. The shopkeeper then tested the object himself and confirmed it was working properly. He asked Yuma what he was trying to measure. Yuma explained that he was attempting to measure the magic ore. The shopkeeper mentioned that magic ores generally have a low mana index. He explained that if the mana index was low, it might not show up on the meter. Yuma was confused and asked the shopkeeper to wait while he tried measuring his own mana index. To his dismay, it also read 0. He wondered if this was due to his low mana index. Despite having defeated more than 100 monsters, the shopkeeper clarified that there seemed to be a misunderstanding. Humans could only absorb a portion of the mana from the monsters they kill. For instance, if he defeated a monster with a mana index of 100, his own mana index would only increase by 1. Therefore, no matter how many slimes he defeated, it was common for his mana index to remain low. Yuma sat in the park, tears streaming down his face as he mourned the loss of his $100. He couldn't believe he had spent so much on what seemed to be worthless equipment. He had killed so many slimes, and yet his efforts had yielded nothing. Frustrated and despondent, he thought about the possibility of swallowing the magic ore, imagining it might turn into a small iron lump. Just then, an advertisement paper got stuck to his leg. He noticed it was promoting free and accurate mana index readings. Yuma's interest was piqued. He hurried to the location advertised, bought a ticket, and hoped that this place would provide a proper reading, unlike the second-hand dryer he had purchased. He was determined not to let his money spent on sprays and the dryer, as well as his half-year struggle, go to waste. At the mana measuring room, he awaited his turn anxiously. After the test, he received the report, which, to his dismay, showed a mana index of 0. The examiner explained that the device was capable of measuring down to 0.01 units, so there was no error in the reading. Yuma was devastated. Exhausted and defeated, he overheard the examiner talking to another man. The second man mentioned that many amateurs like Yuma had come in recently, believing their mana index had increased from killing low-level monsters. He explained that no matter how many slimes one kills in the blue dungeon, it wouldn't affect their mana index significantly. The first man looked concerned and mentioned that it was unusual for the machine to be malfunctioning. He noted that it was a high-end device worth millions of dollars, so they would need to wait for a while to get it sorted out. Meanwhile, the machine continued to print out numerous blank sheets of paper, causing confusion. The second man wondered aloud if the machine might be broken. The first man assured him that the issue would be resolved soon, but for now, they would have to wait. Yuma was so disappointed with his results that he felt all his hard work had been in vain. He noticed a door with a sign that read, Blue Dungeon. Although his original goal had been to have his mana index measured, he had forgotten about it and was now curious about the Blue Dungeon. He decided to enter, thinking that if it required significant effort to get there, it might be worth investigating. Upon entering, he saw a woman guiding others to the entrance of the Blue Dungeon, ensuring they were well prepared. Yuma wondered if this was merely a larger version of the hole in his garden and if it was really such a big deal. To his surprise, he saw an enormous hole. He was astonished at how large the dungeon was. A staff member approached and asked if he was a first-timer. Yuma confirmed that he was, and the staff member requested to see his entry pass. After checking it, she assured him that there would be no danger and that he would be fine. She then asked if he had brought any weapons to deal with the monsters. Yuma pondered this question, unsure about what weapon to bring. He was reminded of when he bought the mana measuring device. There had been a stall selling stun guns and batons next to it, which he had declined. The staff member showed him the available equipment and asked him to choose any item he wanted. He inquired if it was all right to take one, and she told him to remember to return it when he was finished. He agreed and selected a hammer, explaining that although he had been using the hammer for a while, it felt the most comfortable to use. Descending into the dungeon, he saw a sign indicating that it was the first floor. Upon entering, he was amazed by the sight. Despite having gone so deep, there was still light shining from somewhere. Although it might be a stretch to call it well lit, he attributed the relative brightness to the many people present. It seemed everyone was in groups, searching for monsters. Since he had come this far, he was eager to defeat some monsters, though he wondered if there would be any left with so many people around. He spotted a slime and wondered if it was an ordinary one. He found that the slime was very slow, in contrast to the one in his garden that jumped all over the place. He used his hammer to strike it gently and defeated it. He wondered if the slimes were generally so weak, as the one in his garden had been hundreds of times stronger. He questioned whether his mana index could really increase under these conditions, and what all his suffering over the past 6 months had been for. After killing several slimes without finding any magic gems, he began to feel that it was pointless. He noticed a girl who had just obtained a blue magic gem. Someone commented that it was a 0.2 carat blue sky aquamarine and estimated it might be worth around 2,000 yen if the girl decided to sell it. The girl replied that she intended to use it. The lady informed her that the magic stone could only be used within the dungeon. Yuma wondered if his thinking was at the level of an elementary school student. As he looked at his 0 report, he felt increasingly disheartened. No matter how many slimes he defeated, he still couldn't use magic. The scene shifts to the International Dungeon Research Organization, where a man handed an envelope to Clark and asked him to pass it on to Ethan. Clark inquired if the man was sure it was all right for him to do so. The man apologized but admitted that he did not like Ethan, describing him as odd and rude, with a tendency to judge things solely based on their level of interest. Nevertheless, Ethan was an outstanding scholar, having been the first to discover mana, and the man was certain that Ethan's expertise would be essential this time as well. Therefore, Clark should deliver the envelope, and the man entrusted this task to him. When Clark delivered the envelope to Ethan, Ethan remarked that there was no mistaking the issue. He observed that mana was leaking out of the dungeons, and what was more concerning was that the amount seemed to be increasing over time. Clark agreed and asked if this could become a problem in the near future. Ethan, with a sense of urgency, explained that the reason monsters weren't coming out of the dungeon was that there was no mana above ground. If the mana continued to leak at this rate, it would only be a matter of time before monsters began to appear on the surface. As Clark appeared to panic, Ethan reassured him not to worry. He explained that the increase in mana density was still negligible. Even if monsters did start emerging, they would likely be low-level ones, posing no immediate danger. Losing their composure would only narrow their perspective and impair their judgment. While there was no problem at present, Clark needed to calmly devise appropriate measures. Clark agreed, acknowledging that if Ethan said so, it must be accurate. Ethan directed him to page 8 of their report, which contained more critical information. The report indicated that while mana density in the upper levels was rising slowly, if this trend continued, it could lead to monsters from the deeper levels starting to appear. Despite the growing mana density, there was no immediate need for concern, but it was essential to be prepared. Feeling the pressure, Clark admitted he hadn't thought it was possible to stay calm in such a situation, but found himself surprisingly settling down. Ethan then pointed out that there were other pressing problems that needed attention. Clark asked about these other issues. Ethan explained the implications of mana overflowing outside the dungeons. Clark asked if Ethan knew what this might entail. Ethan revealed that it could mean they might be able to use magic outside of the dungeons. The scene shifts to Yuma, who was sitting with the magic stone he had acquired. Reflecting on the start of summer break and the present day, he recalled that he had spent 181 days defeating metal slimes to finally obtain a magic ore drop. Even though the magic ore had a poor magical effect and a low value, and despite not having enough mana to use it, he still wanted to try it as a form of celebration. However, Yuma faced a problem. He wondered if even a small amount of mana in the ore could render it usable. He examined the stone and found that it appeared to have 0 magical properties. The mana measuring device he had confirmed that it registered as 0. Despite this, he was aware that a 0 reading didn't necessarily mean there was no mana at all. Yuma considered the quickest way to test its usability would be to eat the ore, but the idea of it being unusable and passing through his system uneventfully made him uneasy. Yuma searched online and found that a typical piece of magic ore was about 3 to 4 centimeters. Given this, he reasoned that even a 2-centimeter lump might be sufficient. He decided to prepare tea and consume the stone along with it. At first, he didn't feel any immediate difference, but he did notice a small sensation in his stomach. He was pleased to feel a warmth spreading through him, indicating that the ore might be having some effect. He recalled that magic ore was supposed to enhance one's physical abilities, and though the increase seemed minimal, he hoped it might unlock some hidden potential or grant him extraordinary powers. Afterward, he went outside and began mimicking combat movements, but found that nothing seemed to have changed. Considering that magic could only be used within dungeons, he decided to be content with having tried the ore. Mame came over to him, barking, and Yuma asked what was wrong. Mame's barking persisted as Yuma tried to see if any changes had occurred. He reassured Mamie, saying there was no need to bark excessively unless there was a slime or if Mamie was hungry. As he reassured his dog, Yuma noticed that his hand was starting to change. Worried and confused, Yuma rushed to his room, wondering what was happening to him. Hearing Mamie still barking, his mother asked Yuma what he was doing. Yuma glanced at his reflection in the mirror and was alarmed to see that his face appeared as though it were turning to metal. He recalled the properties of the magic ore and checked his body, which seemed to be getting harder. He questioned whether magic could be used outside of dungeons, and wondered about the nature of this particular magic ore. Concerned that he might not return to normal and fearing he might remain in this state for the rest of his life, Yuma felt distressed. He decided to sit down and ponder what to do next, realizing he no longer wanted to continue with this experiment. He blamed the slime for his current predicament and began to look for a solution. Noticing the hammer nearby, he picked it up and struck his hand with it. To his surprise, he felt no pain, and his hand was as hard as the metal slime. He then applied a cooling spray to his hand, which felt refreshing. He noted that, much like the slime, he seemed to be as weak to cold and fire. Yuma soon returned to normal, and noted that the effect of the magic ore wore off in about 5 minutes. Looking back, the experience seemed less daunting and even a bit amusing. Despite the initial panic, he realized that the effect might have been a one-time thing. He wondered if this was the end of the line for him. The next day, he experimented again and found that he could indeed become hard, just as before. Reflecting on the experience, he compared it to taking an exam without studying. He had used the ore without knowing what to expect. Even though his mana index was reported as 0, it seemed he had awakened some kind of ability. This, he realized, was the power of the dungeon mage ore. He mentioned that the transformation lasted for 5 minutes, similar to how rain ceases automatically with time. After some thought, he realized that he could only use the ore's ability once a day. Despite this limitation, the power to harden could be incredibly useful in dungeons. If he ventured into the lower levels and used his ability to harden, defeating monsters with his metal fists would be much easier. Yuma also considered the possibility of becoming a streamer, inspired by a recent broadcast he had seen. Although he wasn't very interested in streaming, He saw the potential for it if he could leverage his newfound abilities. Yuma watched a video detailing the types of monsters found in the deeper levels of the dungeon. It became clear that physical attacks were nearly ineffective at these levels, as the monsters had incredibly sturdy bodies capable of withstanding gunshots and shelling. Magic, therefore, was invaluable for defeating these creatures. The video showcased a variety of formidable monsters, including a fire-breathing dragon, a strange wind-blowing bird, a demon clad in lightning, and a spirit that controlled cold. These monsters had a wide range of magical abilities, making magic the only viable means of opposition. Yuma realized that his physical attacks were weak against both cold and fire, leaving him feeling useless. He struggled to think of how to effectively use his newfound ability. Although he frequently worried about his future, he often found himself lazing around, envious of wealthy and famous people without taking action toward his own goals. With no immediate plans, he decided to enroll in a bottom-tier university with low entry requirements, despite feeling that defeating slimes was becoming a chore. Yuma continued his daily routine, which included dealing with slimes and lazing around. It had been over a year since he first encountered the metal slime. The scene shifts to Ibaraki Prefecture, where at the Red Dungeon, a group of people was terrified and calling for help as they faced a dragon. Rui arrived to rescue them. Using his powers and a protective coat, he defeated the dragon by targeting its vital points, particularly its neck. After the battle, the others approached Rui to check if he was all right. Rui reassured them that he was fine, and noted that the fireproof coat he borrowed for the trial session had been instrumental in his victory. A boy suggested that Rui should undergo a health check, and they asked for his name. Rui mentioned that he was a third-year high school student. The scene then shifts to a cabin where Rui was sitting. A man entered and apologized for making Rui wait. The man was Ishikawa from the RL Seed Corporation, the supervisor for the dungeon trial session. Ishikawa shook Rui's hand and expressed his gratitude for saving his employees. Rui humbly replied that it was nothing and that he was glad to help. The man remarked that Rui had precisely targeted the salamander's vital points, piercing its neck and side with skillful accuracy. He asked Rui if he had specifically aimed for those weak spots. Rui confirmed that he had studied the monsters in the dungeon beforehand, so when he encountered one he was familiar with, he could recall its weak points. The man expressed his admiration for Rui's outstanding performance and instructed him to hold out his hand. Rui complied, and the man presented him with the magic gem dropped by the salamander, a vermilion silver ruby. He explained that, since Rui had defeated the salamander, the gem rightfully belonged to him. With a mana index of 700, it was a rare and valuable gem worth 14 million yen on the market. Rui hesitated, feeling that such a valuable item was too much for him to accept. The man reassured him that the magic gems obtained from slaying monsters during the trial session were meant to be taken home by the victor. Additionally, he felt that this gem might prove useful for Rui in the future. Despite his reservations, Rui was encouraged to accept the gift. The scene shifts to December 12th, where Yuma, feeling exceptionally sleepy and burdened by school, prepared some HSIT. He grumbled about how he had no interest in celebrities or famous people and wondered who would care about their lives. As he prepared his tea, he overheard news about a recent dungeon trial. Apparently, a salamander, typically found on the 10th floor or deeper, had appeared on an upper floor, causing significant trouble for young aspiring seekers. Yuma was taken aback, realizing that monsters from the 10th floor were usually quite formidable. He then heard that during the incident, a woman who was being attacked had been rescued by a high school student named Rui. At school, Yuma saw a crowd of reporters gathered around Rui. One reporter asked Rui if he had been afraid of the monsters. Rui responded that he had been so focused on the battle that he hadn't thought about fear. Another person commented on how even the seekers from RL Seed Corporation were astonished that a high school student had managed to defeat such a powerful monster. Rui attributed his success to the rental weapons available during the trial. The reporter mentioned that the magic gem Rui had obtained was worth around 14 million yen and asked if Rui planned to sell it. Yuma was stunned by the gem's high value. Rui, however, said he had no intention of selling it. He planned to use it. This surprised Yuma even more. Rui explained that he was aiming to become a seeker in the future. A bystander noted that Rui had excellent grades and could easily attend a prestigious university, but Rui was determined to contribute to society. The man added that Rui was a talented individual recognized by RL Seed. Yuma then spotted Kaide and asked her what RL Seed was. She explained that RL Seed was the largest dungeon corporation in Japan, and that Rui's greatest aspiration was to join them. To achieve this goal, Rui planned to attend the National Training Institution after graduation. The Seeker Training Institution, STI, was known for nurturing aspiring seekers. It seemed Yuma was unfamiliar with these details. Yuma replied that he hadn't been informed about any of this. Kaidi pointed out that it was because Yuma had previously expressed no interest in such matters, saying they had no relevance to him. She also revealed something she hadn't shared before she would be joining STI with Rui after graduation. Kaidi continued, explaining that becoming a healer, someone who could use healing magic through a white magic gem, was a rare and prestigious job. She aspired to become a messiah, a healer who could bring significant positive change. Yuma asked if that wasn't more challenging than becoming a seeker. Kaidi agreed, acknowledging that it might be, but she was determined. She had already approached Rui to help her get an aptitude test with RLS Seed. The test had confirmed her potential, and now that she had found her dream for the future, she was committed to pursuing it with all her effort. As Kaide left, Yuma reflected on his own situation. Rui, his childhood friend whom he viewed as a rival for reasons he couldn't fully understand, and Kaide, whom Yuma had always imagined he would be with forever, had both found their paths and were working hard toward their goals. Meanwhile, Yuma felt lost. He wondered what he was doing with his life and what he should do next. He realized he had no enthusiasm or clear interests, and it bothered him. He knew he needed to find something to focus on, something that would ignite his passion and give him direction. As Yuma arrives home, he reflects on the significant difference between himself and Kaide and Rui, particularly in terms of their special abilities. To catch up with them, he decides to begin studying earnestly. However, after some time, he lies down in frustration, thinking that his efforts are hopeless. He then asks Mommy if she believes he has any chance of success. In his garden, Yuma contemplates the lack of dreams or clear goals in his life. He feels directionless and lost, unsure of what to do or where to go. Without any motivation, he struggles to find a purpose. He recalls Rui, his childhood friend, who was an attractive boy with outstanding grades and excelled in sports. Recently, Rui's victory over a salamander had made headlines, and his future ambition was to become a seeker. On the other hand, Kaide, who used to tease Yuma and was quite noisy, had recently become more feminine, which surprised him. Raised by a single mother, Kaide's childhood dream had been to pursue a career that helps those in need. In the past, Kaide had considered joining a nursing school, but now it seems she has set her sights on becoming a messiah. Both Rui and Kaide are making significant progress toward their goals, and Yuma has no doubt that they will achieve what they are aiming for. Given their special talents and the recognition they have received, it is natural that they attract envy from others. With the status they have acquired, this envy will only continue to grow. Observing Rui and Kaide's progress, Yuma realizes that whatever makes them both so enviable and radiant is something he cannot yet grasp. He longs to achieve something similar himself. Mommy barks, reminding Yuma that he needs to stay committed to his daily routine. Since then, Yuma has managed to acquire 2 more magic ores. After consuming them, the duration of his metallization ability increased by 15 minutes, though it was still a relatively minor upgrade. Moving on, he continues his usual activities and encounters a golden slime moving swiftly through the cave. As Yuma uses the spray to attack the golden slime, he finds that it's ineffective. Realizing that this slime is different from those he's encountered before, he decides to employ a variety of techniques, including both the spray and the burner. After a prolonged battle, he successfully defeats the golden slime and acquires a golden magic ore. Yuma searches online but finds no information about this new ore. Even using the mana index reveals a reading of 0, suggesting that it may have little to no magical value. Considering that it resembles gold, he contemplates selling it. He wonders if there is a precious metal exchange service where he can have it appraised. He inquires about any deals that could prove the gold's purity and seeks information on the purchase history and certification. However, he realizes that none of the drops from the golden slime match what he is looking for. He questions whether miners are allowed to explore such places alone, but finds out that they are not. Deciding to consume the ore, he wonders if it will make his body golden and shiny. To his disappointment, there is no noticeable change in his appearance. Over several days, he continues to obtain similar stones, finding it odd that there is no variation or improvement. After a year of killing slimes, Yuma has only collected 3 magic ores. However, for the past 5 days, the magic ores have been dropping consistently. He speculates that the golden slime's appearance might have increased the drop rate to 100%, and wonders if this could also affect the drop rate of magic gems. He hopes that his year-long struggle might finally be rewarded. Determined to test this theory, Yuma rides his bike to the blue dungeon, planning to test it on the normal slimes. Unfortunately, he is disappointed to find that no magic gems drop, leading him to conclude that the increased drop rate might only apply to magic ores. Following this, Yuma acquires 14 magic ores in quick succession. After consuming a sufficient amount, he discovers that he can now maintain metallization for a maximum of 70 minutes. Just as he begins to feel disheartened, he is shocked to encounter a red slime. The color variation surprises him, as he didn't think metallization could evolve further beyond the golden slime. He eats a large quantity of magic ores, which makes his body extremely hard. His clothes end up ripping during the process, which he finds inconvenient. Despite the discomfort, he decides that if the slime wants a fight, then he will oblige. As Yuma hardens his body, the red slime attacks him, and he quickly realizes that his usual methods will be ineffective. He tries using the burner, but it has no effect, as the red slime appears to be immune to heat. He begins to consider ways to weaken the metal. After researching online, he finds a method that allows him to defeat the red slime. The following day, Yuma encounters a new type of slime and searches the internet again for information on how to handle it. The same process continues for 2 more days, during which he defeats the slimes and collects 4 additional colored magic ores. Curious about the colored ores, Yuma wonders if the drop rate for these ores might have also been increased to 100% due to the golden slime. He decides to consume the ores, even though they are colored and he cannot sell them. After eating the ores, he removes his shirt to check for any changes. To his astonishment, his upper body transforms significantly, taking on a monstrous appearance. He is shocked by the changes and reflects on how consuming the magic ores has made him look fearsome and jagged, far different from before. Yuma thinks that he will return to normal once metallization wears off, so he tries not to panic. He decides to investigate the effects of the magic ores and wonders if the internet can provide any answers. He checks information about dungeons of various colors: white, blue, red, yellow, green, and black, and considers that the magic ores might have attributes corresponding to these dungeons. He reasons that each type of magic ore could have the same attribute as the dungeon it represents. For example, yellow might grant lightning resistance, and green could be associated with wind resistance. He tests the fire and finds that it doesn't feel warm, and the spray doesn't make him feel cold. If the colored magic ores do indeed correspond to these attributes, he realizes that he has now acquired resistance to fire, water, light, and wind attacks. He is impressed by this. Despite these advancements, Yuma still struggles to find a dream or a goal. He feels that no matter how much his body transforms or how many attributes he acquires, it won't necessarily improve his daily life. However, he is pleased that his abilities have expanded. As he returns to normal, Yuma lies on his bed, contemplating whether the white ore will be his next target. He speculates about the potential for immunity to healing magic and wonders what kind of unusual slime he might encounter. He looks forward to finding out. The scene shifts back to around 2 weeks before Yuma defeated the golden slime. Ethan is standing in front of an old stone, discussing recent events. He mentions that other researchers have been causing quite a stir and wonders what's happening. It appears that a Duke-ranked beast has been defeated, making it the 3rd Duke to fall. In addition, one Lord-level beast has been vanquished, and it's been 3 years since a unique monster was last defeated. The commotion is understandable given the significance of the event. Ethan finds it intriguing that the black ore was destroyed in the process. Clark adds that they are currently verifying the details with governments around the world. Defeating a Duke-ranked beast indicates that the involved clan must be quite formidable. Ethan points out that countries with the most dungeons are likely India, Russia, Australia, and Brazil. Clark mentions that Japan is also among them. Ethan replies that exploration in Japan has not progressed significantly, making it unlikely to find substantial profit in diving deep into a black dungeon. He notes that only a few daring individuals would take such a risk without guaranteed rewards. The scene returns to the present, where Yuma is facing a massive slime. He reflects on how relieved he feels that slimes can't escape their own lairs, but he questions whether he can actually defeat such a formidable monster. He decides not to give up, reasoning that if he manages to defeat this giant slime, it wouldn't be surprising if it dropped an extremely rare magic ore. Yuma prepares for battle with all his burners and sprays, and he activates his enhanced metallic ability. However, he forgets to remove his clothes, causing them to tear. As he engages in combat, he wonders what's happening. The slime retaliates by using its jelly-like body to launch attacks against him. Despite the attacks, Yuma notices that his metallic form seems to withstand the blows without getting hurt or cut. The slime uses its jelly-like body to create various equipment and throws Yuma out of its vicinity. Yuma comments that such tactics won't work on him. Although he is attacked, he is not injured, but his clothes are destroyed. He is confident that his metallic body can endure, and he still has burners and sprays to fight back. He continues battling for around an hour, growing increasingly frustrated as the slime shows no signs of tiring. Even though the slime's attacks don't cause him physical harm, the constant hits are becoming annoying. Having exhausted all his sprays and burners, Yuma wonders what he should do next. Yuma spots his hammer and rushes to attack the giant slime. After a fierce battle, he finally defeats it and retrieves an ore. With his clothes completely shredded, he returns home, where his mother, visibly upset, asks what he has been doing. He explains that he was playing around too much with Mame. His mother wonders if he really tore his clothes just from playing. Afterward, Yuma examines the ore and notes that it looks normal at first glance, but upon closer inspection, he sees a floral pattern. Considering he defeated such a strong monster, he expects that the ore should have at least slightly increased his mana. When he checks his mana index, it still shows 0, leaving him puzzled about the pattern on the ore. He wonders if, even with the minimal mana he has, he could sell the ore instead of using it himself. With no other options, he decides to eat the ore. As he consumes it, he begins to feel warmth spreading through his stomach. The sensation intensifies, and he questions whether he might have made a mistake. Despite the discomfort, he notes that it seems to be settling down. He wonders if this might lead to another change, such as encountering more slimes. As he prepares to transform, he realizes he hasn't removed his clothes, causing them to shred once more. In his new form, he resembles a villain from a superhero movie and even grows taller. Yuma speculates that he might have gained some special abilities from the transformation, similar to the capabilities the giant slime exhibited. As he experiments, he finds he can create similar effects with his own hands and marvels at how cool it is. He wonders if there are any other abilities he might discover. He then transforms into a jelly-like form and approaches Mame, asking how he looks. Mame is frightened by the sight and reacts by attacking Yuma. Yuma tries to explain that it's him, urging Mame to stop. Meanwhile, at the International Dungeon Research Organization, an emergency meeting is being held among chief researchers. Chairman Maya from Israel addresses the group, stating that an unprecedented and serious situation has occurred. The Orpheus tablet has experienced abnormal events for 4 consecutive days. A Black Duke was defeated for the first time in 3 years, and reports of this came in 2 weeks ago. It is astonishing that 4 lords have been defeated in such quick succession. Physicist James from the USA notes that they haven't received any information yet and questions whether any country is conducting large-scale exploration. Biologist Li Haran from China accuses James of suggesting that his country is hiding information and urges him to stop making baseless accusations. Archaeologist Ahmad from Egypt adds that the breaking of red, blue, yellow, and green ores every other day suggests that 4 dungeons were almost simultaneously conquered. He questions why anyone would undertake such a feat. James replied that he didn't know the exact reason, but if anyone could accomplish it, it would likely be either the USA or China. Li Haran retorted that hiding information was a specialty of America. Ethan then raised his hand, suggesting that entering and conquering 4 dungeons simultaneously would require a large number of seekers. He questioned if such a feat was even possible. He recalled that in the past, a lord found in America was defeated by 15 seekers, including the powerful Flame Emperor Albert. Despite their efforts, there were still 7 casualties, and they had encountered the Lord on the 100th floor. Achieving simultaneous conquests in 4 different locations seemed impossible. James inquired about the reasons behind the broken ores on the tablet, noting that there was no clear explanation. Ethan responded that their initial assumptions might have been incorrect. The ores had a specific pattern, and they had assumed that monsters from dungeons of the same color were responsible. However, the already defeated lords and dukes were in dungeons matching the color of the broken ores. He questioned whether the red, yellow, blue, and green lords defeated during this time were all in the same dungeon, which could challenge their previous assumptions. Since the black ore was broken 2 weeks ago, it would suggest that the black dungeon was the one being conquered, a particularly unresearched and mysterious area. James noted that no country allows entry into the black dungeon without permission. Ethan proposed the possibility of a newly appeared black dungeon. Maya pointed out that if that were the case, there should be seekers who have reached the 100th floor, as the most exceptional seekers are usually managed more by their country and military than by the dungeons themselves. Ethan speculated that there could be unknown seekers who have discovered a new black dungeon and defeated the Duke there, continuing to defeat the lords in quick succession. Although this is just speculation, it's the only explanation that fits the situation. A seeker who has defeated 4 lords must be on par with or stronger than the world's top seeker groups. James expressed skepticism, stating that such a person is unlikely to exist. Just then, a man entered, apologizing for the interruption, but stressing that there was an urgent matter to address. Ethan guessed that his theory might not be entirely off the mark and suggested that one of the 6 kings, the Black King, could have been defeated.